Hey, Spencer Sutton here with Evernest, and I'm with longtime team member, Evernest team member, Jacob West. Jacob, thanks for sitting down with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, so Jacob's worn a lot of hats in our company. He's been in the accounting department. He's were you Birmingham team leader? Or
for a little while, yeah, Chattanooga for a little while.
Chattanooga for a little bit. Now he and his wife live in Detroit, and he is our team leader in Detroit, and really things have taken off. We've exploded in Detroit, and I'm just really glad that he's taken the time to sit down and talk with me because, quite frankly, we get a lot of people from Detroit who reach out to us asking our opinions about areas to invest in, where to buy, all of these things. But we thought we would step back and probably, the question I want to ask you, Jacob, is give me three really important things that you believe investors should know before they invest in Detroit. What are probably your top three? Because you've spoken with a lot of people.
Yeah, so I would definitely say that number one would be that Detroit is not just city limits Detroit. So
Gotcha.
Like every city in America, you kind of use the city name as, the title for the whole metro area.
Yeah, just kind of as the blanket.
And in some areas that is more accurate than others. So in Detroit, it's not very accurate. So the Detroit metro area is about 5.5 million people. And within the city limits of Detroit, the population's only about 750 to a million, or 750,000 to a million. The census is a hotly debated subject, so I won't say an exact number. But yeah, so it's really only about a quarter of the metro area's population. Gotcha. And for the most part, what most investors can and do buy in Detroit is, and everywhere, is affordable places, right? They're not buying the ultra luxe, stuff that's downtown high rise,
super high end.
Yeah,
stuff,
so that's not really what you're buying. So outside of that, in Detroit, it's a fairly affordable area. It does have historical issues with lack of investment and crime in some areas. But you can still make a great profit. Don't want to discourage anyone from going to Detroit entirely. But that kind of vibe, that avatar of that 3-1 bungalow in kind of a rougher neighborhood that's gonna, values around 100,000.
Yeah.
That avatar is what you would be thinking of in the city limits of Detroit, if you're an investor. But that is not what it looks like, in some cases just across the road in another city that doesn't have that historical lack of investment or historical mismanagement. You may be able to pay, let's say, $150,000 for that 3-1 and have none of those issues, but maybe just a lower cash flow. So most of what I would say the investor type stuff outside of the city limits is more that solid middle of the road B-class area, rents for a 3-bed, 1-bath in the 1,300 to 1,800 range. And there's a ton of different cities and a ton of variety outside of Detroit. So the key thing to know is that Detroit and its good things and its bad things is not the metro area.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because a lot of times investors get so fixated on spreadsheets of hey, buy for 100, rent for the 1% rule, the 2% rule, whatever, that they ignore the risk that are involved in investing in some of the D-class areas. Okay, so that's number one. That's really good. That's good for people
and
to
you
know.
Mentioned spreadsheets. If you are only checking the Detroit box and you're interested in investing in Detroit, that's a huge mistake. You're literally taking 3/4 of the potential deals and saying, don't want to look at you.
Right.
Because it is not the whole metro area. And it's not like in, for example, in Birmingham, if you search Birmingham as a search term, you will get the entire metro area.
Correct.
In Detroit, that is not necessarily true because it's such a bigger city that in Detroit, if you only search that and don't put metro area in your search terms, or you select, this is the only city I'm looking at, you will seriously only get that.
Right, you'll limit yourself.
Yeah, you don't want to limit yourself at all because there's opportunities all over the metro area, even for high cash flow stuff.
Yeah. Okay, good. So that's number one. Okay, what's number two?
The second thing I would say is know about the rental registration policies in Michigan. So almost every city has a rental registration process. They're all a little bit different, but generally it's paying a fee, having an inspection, that's general health and safety stuff, passing the inspection and getting your certificate, and then renewing it every 2 or 3 years, depending on the city. So the reason that a lot of that has kind of popped up, and it's not the sole reason, but it's the biggest reason, is that the surrounding areas didn't want to become Detroit. They didn't want to have a bunch of people sitting on non-owner occupied houses that were falling apart, because that's bad for property values, it's bad for the neighborhood, it's bad for everything.
Yeah.
So, personally, it is certainly a hassle. I hate paperwork. So it is certainly a hassle. I totally get the frustration there. Sometimes in certain cities or, with certain inspectors, maybe you don't agree with what they say, that's not a trip hazard, man, it's only a quarter inch, why are you going to make me put concrete over it? So you may run into some of those things occasionally, but in general, it's pretty common sense health and safety stuff, and the fact that it exists keeps your property values up.
Let me ask you this, is it, because when I think of that, we don't have that in Birmingham, besides maybe a couple of areas like Center Point's now doing that, but that makes me think of Section 8.
Yes.
Section 8 coming and doing an inspection on the property before you'll get a
very similar
occupancy tag or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, very, very similar to that process, and most people's houses are going to be 99% of the way there. They may be like, oh darn, I missed a cracked outlet cover.
Right.
It'll be stuff like that usually. And it's more of a hassle than anything else. I wouldn't say it adds a tremendous amount to your maintenance expenditures, because if you're keeping up the property the way you should, those things will already be done.
Yes.
It's more of a hassle, and you have to deal with it. But to me, the fact that in the city of Detroit they have this, but they're not great at enforcement yet. The other cities are great at enforcement. So if you're not doing these things right, you can get a ticket.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're enforcing it means that I can go to any city around Detroit and I can be confident that if I buy a house, there is no chance in hell that there is going to be a burnout sitting next to my house for 6 months.
Yeah.
It will not happen. The city will fine them into oblivion
Yeah.
and potentially bulldoze the place.
Yeah.
If they collect enough fines, and then that may happen. So, it's security from an owner's perspective that you're not going to have blight issues in the long term. But knowing that those exist and knowing that you have to take care of that can prevent you from a bigger headache of, oh no, I'm late. Oh no, the last property manager or the last owner didn't have these inspections done, so the city's already on their case about it.
Right.
Just knowing that it exists is really the thing. It's not something that I would say buy here versus there because of their policies. They're all pretty similar. I would just say just know that is something you need to do.
I think that's really important, because I have seen, we talk a lot about certain areas in different cities. It's on a street-by-street basis. The reason we even say it's on a street-by-street basis is a lot of times because there's burnouts on the street. And once you have a vacant property and a burnout, like nobody wants to rent a house. No good resident wants to rent a house on that street. And landlords just like more
it increases
vacancy.
Crime issues.
There's vandalism, there's break-ins, there's all kind of stuff. So good. That's good to know. And okay, so that's number 2. What's number 3?
So number 3 for me would be just kind of an understanding of where Detroit and where Southeast Michigan is in terms of kind of the rental and housing market, which I think this would probably be my number 3 for like every city.
Yeah.
But the home values and rents have gone up incredibly quickly in the last 3 to 4 years, just like everywhere else.
Right. Correct.
So things are going to be more expensive in Detroit than they used to be. So it's not the place where you can go buy a house for $3,000 anymore.
Correct.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's just the way that the market's gone. So having an understanding that maybe your historical understanding of Detroit may no longer be correct as of the last 5 years. So that's important for your buying decisions. Yeah. It's important for your cash flow calculations. It's important to factor that into maintenance costs, because construction and maintenance labor is in extremely short supply in Detroit area right now. Vendor prices are higher than they used to be. It's something that you kind of have this idea in your mind of like this ultra low entry point, ultra high cash flow, high risk, high reward investment that a lot of people take into Detroit. in their heads, it's not necessarily the same anymore.
Gotcha.
You can still get high cash flows, but it's going to look, for the most part, a good investment in Detroit is going to look more like a good investment everywhere now. It's not going to be 22% cap rates or something like that. It's going to be 11% cap rates, and
which is still great,
and reliable home values, which is good. It's better, for me, and that's my own personal opinion. But I'm more of a middle of the road kind of guy than high risk, high reward. So I kind of like it. But I would say take that understanding into both the Detroit area or wherever you're going. Is just knowing kind of what's occurred in the last few years, since maybe a lot of people may have started their investing journey when the market was in a very different place. So understanding that and how that interacts with both the good parts with home values increasing more and rents being way higher, and the bad parts with your costs being higher, of course. So that would be my number 3.
This has been great. I mean, I hope that you, if you're watching this, you're considering Detroit. I hope you better understand the importance of having somebody like boots on the ground. And that's one of the things that I love about our company, is that we are a national brand. Yes, we're in right now 25 different markets and growing, but we also have experts like Jacob and his team on the ground. So if you would like to speak with somebody on Jacob's team, you can reach out to sales@evernest.co, and somebody will be right back in touch with you. And we look forward to helping you make the right decisions to invest in Detroit or whatever city that you choose.